on today's episode of All About Life with Danielle Brown.
I have so much more to offer aside from having kids because I choose not to. Say, God, can you show me how I can further your word in a different way? It's great to have kids and pass on that legacy, but you can do that to everybody around you. It doesn't have to be through kids.
Rachel, welcome to the All About Life podcast and YouTube. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about our conversation.
No, I'm so pumped. Okay, we just have to be honest for everyone that's joining us. It took us about 20 minutes to get this thing started because we're friends. Yeah, we had to like catch up and chat and kind of almost pretend an intro when like we've already been chatting this whole time. So I feel like in honor of being real and in full transparency, we have talked, we've chatted, and we had to stage.
I mean, yeah.
Honestly, yeah, if we keep checking our lighting, all of that good stuff. So, okay, really, how is life right now? How is David? Catch me up on all the things.
I mean, we're good. We moved from Charleston to Tennessee in September.
Mm-hmm.
Can't say I love it here, but it's fine. I'm transitioning into blogging full time. I run a blog. I blog about like fashion and beauty and things like that. You can follow me at Honey Sweet Petite on Instagram.
Better go follow.
And David he's a project manager for construction company. So we're out here while he builds this job, and then it'll be on to the next one. So yeah, we're just busy.
I love you guys. Salman and I talk about y'all all the time. For everyone who doesn't know, Rachel's a pro, came and did my makeup at my wedding. Everyone was asking me after the wedding, oh my gosh, your makeup was amazing. Like, who did it? And I was like, I got you. And you're like, I'm not even a makeup professional, but basically you are. But for everyone who doesn't know about you and David, kind of take us back to the beginning of y'all because it goes a ways back.
Yes. I mean, we've been together for half of my life now, over half of my life. So,
Which is crazy because we're so young. Yeah. I'm not saying how old I am, but like you're not old. So yeah. It started pretty young, huh?
Yes. So I was 14 and David was 16 when we met. We had a mutual friend. We never went to school together. And we've been together ever since. We got married when I was 22. We got married a month after I graduated college. And then he was in Tennessee already working. He had graduated already. So I moved there with him, and we've been on the road ever since and very career driven. And we love it. Wouldn't change a thing.
Y'all live your very best life. Yes. Traveling, eating all the best food, drinking all the best drinks, seeing all the fun sights. So I love keeping up with you guys, but a big part of that is your decision to not have children. And I know that you have talked a lot about, like, you're very open with your friends and you post about it on your blog and your Instagram. And I know you've gotten some feedback. So let's dive right into it, get to the meat and potatoes. Did you and David always know, like back when you were 14 and 16, that you didn't want to have kids? Or how did that conversation ever come up?
I think it's crazy to think about it now because we've always had this lifestyle of let's travel, let's go somewhere. I mean, looking back on it now, obviously don't recommend this, but when we were much younger, we obviously weren't old enough to like get a hotel room. So we would drive to Charleston for the day, which was like 3.5 hours away, and drive back the same day just so we could go somewhere and feel like we were on vacation. Like we've always been about this let's go life, let's go to a nice dinner, let's have good drinks. And then we got married, and I remember before we got married, like you go to pre-marriage counseling or whatever. Mm-hmm. And preacher was like, so what are y'all's thoughts on having kids? And we were like, I don't know, like that's not even like I'm 22, like maybe one day. But we were both on that page, like we don't know, we'll just see, like we're fine if it happens, we're not really thinking about that. And then as we got married and everything, and as that went on, we both were like, maybe later, maybe later. And then one day we were like, do we really want to have kids? And we love our life. Like, we love our freedom. And I do want to say, it's not that you are giving up those things when you do have kids, it's just your priorities change and
Right.
life changes. But we really love the way our life is. And we just both have no desire to be parents. And probably in the last 5 years, we like really realized that that's just not in the cards for us. But, and I've told you this before, the beauty in all of
Mhm.
this is we can always change our mind.
Right.
But then we've been married for 7 years
Quick
almost.
math.
Yeah. And I don't think our minds are going to change anytime soon, but they could, and that is okay. So we shall see.
Right. And don't y'all kind of check in with each other every now and then, like, hey, we're still on the same page, right? Like, because you said if your minds do change, we could still have kids if we wanted to, but right now there's no desire. There's
Right.
not an interest in that.
Yeah. I think I probably ask David like every quarter, every 6 months, I'll be like, are you good? Because I'm still good. But if you're thinking about it, just let me know. Like, we'll talk about it. But I definitely check in more with him to make sure than he ever asked me because I think it's just obvious. Like, I'm not interested. And it's
Now,
not that I don't like kids or anything like that. I love my friends' kids and all that. But personally, I just don't have that desire. So,
not for you. Here's what I love about life and friendships and this podcasting conversation is because we don't have kids yet, but we want kids. We want a ton of kids. Not right now. I think my husband might be ready, but I'm like, hey, we just got married. It hasn't been a year. Let's enjoy that for now. And then we can have a good conversation and appreciate and respect each other's decisions and that yeah, I don't want kids for me. But what would you do if David came back and was like, hey, Rachel, I've been thinking, like, would that be a complete shock to you?
yeah, I'd be like in my prayer room on my knees, like, God, help me out here. You have to put this on my heart for real, for real, for real. But David, I will say, David would be the best dad. I mean, when we're around kids, they all want to be around him. Like,
Mhm.
I look at a newborn and I'm like, I'll just look from here, like, you hold it. Like, I'm good. Like, I don't know what to do. And he can just hold babies, he can change diapers and all that. So he would be a great dad. And even if it happened on accident, we would be good. I think we
Yeah,
would be great parents.
you would be.
Yeah. But, just not planning on it.
So tell me, what was the reaction from family and friends? Was this something that y'all got married and you kind of told everyone, don't ask about it, we're not planning on it? Or maybe 5 years went by and moms are checking in, like, hey, are you going to give me any grandbabies? And you're having to have that conversation of, nope, not from us. What
Yeah.
is what are those conversations like for you guys?
I think because we got married so young, people didn't really ask us at first. I think it was obvious, like, we need to get ourselves established. We need to build a savings and all of those things. And we were moving for David's job. So it was like, you guys get settled, enjoy married life. Like, we had trips planned. And it probably wasn't until we like moved to Charleston, I started like
Mm.
hearing little things like, hey, what do you guys think about having kids? Are you going to have kids? Like, and I'm like, what are you, like, me and David had already decided we're probably not going to. So I just assumed, I don't know. I knew people would ask, but I just thought maybe about our lifestyle was obvious. Like, we're good, we're enjoying ourselves. But I did have a
Yeah.
family member be like, we were walking in a store and she was just like, this would be so cute for your little baby. And I was like, I looked at David and I think I just saw red because first of
Mhm.
all, it's not even, she didn't even know my situation. You know what I mean? So it was
Right.
like, first of all, that's rude. You never
Yeah.
know what women are going through.
So
And second
true.
of all, I'm like, wait, you just assume we're going to have kids, you know? But yeah, a lot of people didn't ask because I made it clear to a lot of my friends, but I think the people I didn't make it clear to, they would ask. And
Mhm.
I would just tell them, like, we're not really planning on having kids. And it was definitely a shock to some people for sure. So,
Really?
yeah.
Now it's been a few years, so we don't have to name names,
Right.
but now you've been married for a while. Y'all are not old, but how do you say older with that? Like you're not newlyweds, you're not
Well,
22 anymore.
yeah, we're in our late 20s. I mean, David's in
Yeah.
his early 30s. I am not yet. So I'm late 20s.
Said, I am not in my 30s yet, but is there still some shock or pressure, or has everyone kind of come to terms and they're happy for you guys in the lifestyle that y'all have decided for yourselves?
I think everybody has come to terms at this point. It's been a long time, but I do think there's a little disappointment from some people, and that sucks. I mean, I just want people to be happy for us, and me and David have done like amazing things in our career, and
Mhm.
unfortunately, like that's not celebrated as much, I
Yeah.
think, as if I were to have a child. I actually saw something on Instagram yesterday, and it's like, let's not forget to celebrate our friends who are starting a new job, who are starting a business,
Mhm.
who got a promotion. Things like that are such a big deal, you know, but they get overshadowed by weddings and babies and things like that. And it's like, no, pick up the phone and like call your friend who just started a podcast, you know, like
Yeah.
this is huge. This is your baby, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In this
Yeah.
moment, this is your baby. And like it's really important that we support people even if it's not a big deal to us. So at this point, I think everybody has accepted it. Unfortunately, though, it's like it's
Mhm.
almost like there's nothing to celebrate with some people. You know what I mean? It's always just like
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just this weird feeling sometimes that I feel like I'm invited to everything. But if I were to throw a party for my business,
Yeah.
would people make an effort to come? And I'm not talking about everybody, obviously.
For sure.
But there's just people who make you feel like what you're doing isn't as important because you don't have a family of your own.
So true.
Yeah.
I think for all the women or men or friends listening to this who have made that same decision, I am sure that is such a relatable feeling because you've shared about this on your blog and you've actually had people reach out to you like, hey, we don't want to have kids either. And we've gotten this response, or I totally relate with that, right?
Yeah. I share it on my blog. Every once in a while, when I see some growth, I'll do like an about me and I'll share that we don't want kids. And I get so many messages of people saying, like, yeah, we don't want kids either. It's so nice to see somebody sharing this in a positive way. Because I told you this earlier, sometimes it seems like the room is so divided. Either you want kids or you don't. And
Mhm.
it's like, they can't mix. Like, I want to come over when you have kids for Friday night movie night and eat pizza and watch a movie with your kids. You know what I mean? Like, I want
Yes.
to be included. I want to do those things. And like,
Yeah.
I want you to get a babysitter one night and we'll go out, you know? But
100%. 100%.
what was the question again? Did I even answer it?
Yeah, yeah. I guess just the relatability. And yeah, I didn't even ask a question, but just that you're not alone in this and that that feeling is like valid. I love that you brought that up. Like, don't forget to celebrate those other milestones besides getting married or having kids, which are huge milestones. I just got married and like that's the biggest thing I've probably done in my life, but not having kids yet. So
Right.
don't
And
worry, celebrating that.
it's also okay to be in the middle. Like, hey, we don't know. It's okay. Like, the
Mhm.
beauty in all this is we can all change our minds, you know? And obviously, we don't have this huge window of time, but
Right.
we can all change our minds. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah. Have you ever felt that the decision is seen as selfish? Like, I would rather go out and vacation and not have kids, or I would rather work on my business and not have children. Has that decision for you guys been seen, I guess, as selfish to not have kids?
I mean, I don't know if other people see it as selfish. I'm sure they do. They don't voice it, obviously, because that would be not nice.
Rude.
But have I felt selfish? 100% because I'm like, God gave me this body to create children, and I'm not going to use that part of me. You know what I mean? So I feel
Mhm.
selfish that way. And I feel selfish that, like, I don't know, like I'm just deciding not to. But I have also seen God use me in so many ways. And the things I've prayed about for years come to life. And so I've, especially now where I'm at, the way God has used me, I have so much more to offer aside from having kids if because I choose not to. There's still like a whole other life to be lived. And if I decide to have kids, then that's great too. It will fit in. But I
Mhm.
still have another purpose aside from being a mom that is just as important, I think.
I love what you just said, and that I have so much to offer to this world and for the kingdom, to further the kingdom, than just having children. My identity as a woman does not have to be found in having children or becoming a mother. I think for a lot of women, like, we grow up wanting to be a mom. I have several friends who, like, their biggest dream is to be a mom, and that's amazing. But I also think it's amazing that you had this dream of sharing fashion and makeup and your passion, and you're reaching people for Jesus that way and not having to become a mom.
Yeah, and I've had like through my blog, like I'll share a Bible verse every now and then, and people have messaged me like, "Hey, you encouraged me to pick up my Bible or to go back to church." And that's deep down, that's it. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
that people talk about passing on their legacy, but there's so many people here that already just need to be reached out to. You know what I mean? There's people in your community, people in your neighborhood, people that you meet at the grocery store, you know what I mean? Like we have opportunities every day. Even on my social media, like you never know who you're reaching when you share things. And I think it's great to have kids and pass on that legacy, but you can do that to everybody around you. It doesn't have to be through kids, is what I believe.
Yeah, I think we have to talk about that aspect of being a Christian and a follower of Jesus and then choosing not to have children. It's not like it's a direct order of you have to have babies, right? It does say to go forth and multiply and further the kingdom. But like we've talked about, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be through your own children. Like we can go and minister and lead other people and do it that way and reach other people for Jesus. Do you think it's harder to make that decision of not having kids as a Christian than a non-believer because there is that aspect?
Yeah, and I mean, I wholeheartedly believe God designed women's bodies to do this, and obviously, like that was the point. So I
Mhm,
do feel, I mean, till this day, I think I still feel like just a tinge of like,
mhm.
oh, should I have just done it? Like, would I, you know? But
Yeah,
I just feel like God really puts it on your heart to be a mother, and that will be your purpose at the end of the day. And I just feel like my purpose from God is different. I just, at this point in my life, I feel like it's different. And maybe next year, God will put on my heart to have a child, and that's fine. But I also, like I said, I feel like I can just go give that to people that are already right here around me, you know?
yeah. What would you say to maybe the girl or guy or anyone who's listening that's struggling with that of they feel maybe selfish or they really don't want children, but they're feeling guilty about it? What would you say to them? How did you kind of work through and still are, as you mentioned, kind of processing and making sure that you're kind of one with Jesus, that this is what he planned for you as well?
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say be in prayer about it because only Jesus can tell you the truth, about what you should be doing. And, if you feel deep down that you don't want to be a parent, just ask God, say, God, can you show me how I can further your word in a different way? I mean, obviously, that's our goal at the end of the day is to bring people to Christ. So, how can
Mhm.
I do that and be a good steward without multiplying, Like, I think I think for me sometimes it seems so simple because it's just something I don't want. But I also remember feeling a lot of guilt, and I think you just have to pray through it and like really get this like pray for specific prayers, like clarity over this topic, like and what is it that's causing you to not want kids? And deep down, what would your life be like if you did have kids? Do you feel like it would take away or would it add to it? Because I mean, we all have past trauma that affects our decisions.
Yeah.
So I think you really got to work through all that and figure it out.
Yeah.
So
And I love the fact that you're like, I know we would be good parents.
Yeah.
We're stable, we have a great marriage, we love Jesus, we can financially handle that. We would be good parents. So it's not even that I don't think I could be a good mother, but it's just that I don't want to be. And that you should feel okay if you've taken it to your husband and to Jesus, that you should feel confident that that decision and that desire is okay.
Yeah. And I think it's just these are conversations you need to have early on. I mean, we didn't have that conversation of not having kids early on, but we were just on such the same page of let's build something of our own and then figure out what we want to do. And we just enjoy our careers so much. It worked out. But just make sure you're having that conversation with people that you trust, or if you have a significant other, that you're talking about those things and it's not a surprise later on because that's not fair either way.
Yeah, I totally agree. You mentioned doing premarital counseling before you get married. And Salman and I had been together for 4 years before we got married. And we were doing premarital counseling and we kind of filled out this like questionnaire almost about these topics that we were going to discuss. And we filled them out for like independently of each other. So then the pastor like could review them and kind of help see where we needed to work and stuff. And one of the sections was family and family planning and children. And the whole thing, Solomon and I literally put down the same answer for everything. And to me, that seemed like a no brainer. Like we both put down 4 kids. Like we could tell you the order and what we want and what the other, like what Solomon wants, or Solomon could say what I want. Like we know everything, and not just about family planning, but all the ones. And then we get to our, counseling session, and the pastor's like, I don't think we really need to talk about this. Y'all had the same answer. And I was like, well, of course we had the same answer. What do you mean? And he was like, you would be surprised that so many couples that, I do this with come in here and they have completely different answers. Like someone will say they don't want kids, and the other person will say they want 5 or 6 kids. And I'm like, you're about to get married and you
Right.
don't know
Like,
that's like a
that
big
should
deal.
be like a pre-proposal discussion. Like, don't
Well,
even
for
ask
sure.
me to marry you if we're not kind of on the same page about that. I mean,
Yeah. Well, I'm like, what have you been talking about your whole dating? Like, did y'all spend 2 weeks together? Which is fine. I'm not hating that, but I'm just saying once you get married, some of those conversations are going to be extra hard if
yeah,
you don't already know that before going into like
yeah.
a marriage. Like,
And I
maybe
will
be
like
serious.
this is off topic, but whatever is like kind of before you get married, it's gonna
Mm,
be a big problem when you get married because you're just
mm,
sitting in it. So make sure you work all those things out. I mean, luckily me and David had been together for like 20
forever.
years before we got married. But he knew I liked to shop, you know, and we had expectations, and luckily we knew those things. But build yourself up for success. Just do that, and you'll be good.
Retweet, Rachel. I 100% agree. I tell people that all the time, especially when they ask us, how's the first year of marriage? And it hasn't been 1 year yet. And everyone says that first year is the hardest. And it's funny because we were actually just talking about this morning, but I'm like, have we fought 100%? Are we watching like a marriage communication thing right now? Yes, we are. But like we already did so much legwork when we were dating and engaged to prepare us for
Yeah,
marriage. And then you get married and you're living together, you're making financial decisions together, like you're talking about having kids, like things you never have had to do with another person before. So obviously things are going to come up, and you're still two people trying to operate as one. And so you're different. Like Salman and I, like we're very similar, but we are very very different. So obviously there's going to be fights, like no relationship is perfect, but I agree with you. Do the legwork, put in the grunt work beforehand, really know each other.
yeah,
I
and
guess
just
we've changed our topic. We're talking marriage now,
yeah,
ladies and gentlemen.
and just lay a foundation for yourself, like your faith. You know, what are your goals? And as long as you can always meet back on those things, you'll be okay. You know,
Yeah, I
sometimes
agree.
else is annoying, and it's okay. I mean, it just
Just is. I mean, I think Solomon's annoying, but he also thinks I'm annoying. So
Oh, same. I mean, same every day.
every day. Okay, getting back on topic, you mentioned something, and I definitely think it's an important piece to bring into this conversation is everyone has past trauma that is going to affect their decisions they make for themselves and their family as an adult. So can we dig into that a little bit about your past trauma, your or life and growing up and how that may affect some of the decisions that you guys have ultimately made for yourselves now?
Yeah. So I grew up in a single parent home. I grew up around addiction, and it was really hard. I mean, I chose to live on my own at the age of 15 because it was just easier. There was just a lot of conflict in my home. My other parent just wasn't around. And it's so crazy to talk about these things now because we're all good now. I'm good
Yes.
with my parents, I'm good with my siblings. Life is good.
Yes.
So just remember, if you come from those things, you can turn it around completely.
Mm.
It's up to you though. You can turn it around. So just remember that. But
I want to do like an amen hand raise to that because amen, Rachel. Yes.
it, it's very important for young people to remember you have a decision all the time. And the better one may be harder, but just do it. Just put your head down and do it. And life will get easier when you make those decisions in the beginning. But anyways, um so yeah, I grew up in a single parent home. We didn't have a lot of money. I went to college on a scholarship, and I had to keep up like a certain GPA and everything. But living in that single parent home, it really just made me realize like what it's like to raise somebody, because I partly raised myself. And I just saw how much it costs to clothe a person, feed a person, house a person. And it's just a big thing to take on and
Right.
be emotionally available 24/7. And, you know, this is bad. I joke about this sometimes, but you could raise this perfect child and they're like, going to be a serial killer. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But I mean,
But the
you know,
best parents, you still like there's sin in the world, right? So it doesn't, sometimes it's like you can be the best parent and teenagers are still teenagers. Like, I mean, I don't have kids, but
yeah,
so, my parents have said
yeah.
about me, I don't know, but that's another episode.
You're an angel. I believe it. Um, but just seeing that really made me realize what it takes to raise a child. And that didn't make me completely say no to having a child, because I know we could be good parents and we could provide everything and more, you know what I mean, to a child. But I just don't want to take that on. I mean, I don't know that if I had to do it, I could do it. And I would make sure that was my priority. But it's just not what I want to do. It's just not. I don't know how else to say it. Like, it's just not.
Here's what I love that it just boils down to is that you don't want it. And that's okay that you don't want to have children. I think sometimes from an outsider, like they try and like will pick out, oh, like, well, maybe it's your upbringing, or
Yeah.
maybe it's that you're selfish and you want to travel. Like traveling is not selfish, first of all. Like you're allowed to like treat yourself and enjoy life and experience what God has provided for us. But I feel like some people think there's always has to be a reason because not having children is still looked at as like the wrong decision or protecting you from something when you're like, yeah, I've worked through like I know where I come from. I've thought about that. That's not why I don't want to have kids. I just don't want to have kids.
Yeah. And I think it's important to like remember, like, when I see pregnant women, I would love to know what that feels like. Like, I think that is so cool. And like having a toddler who calls you mommy, I think that is beautiful. I just don't want it. Like, at the end of the day, it's just not enough, you know what I mean, to want a child. But I do have those feelings. Like, it's not like I'm just like numb to having kids or those like motherly instincts. No, they're there. It's just not overpowering, I guess.
Mm, I love that. So, if you were to leave a piece of advice to actually, let me switch my question because we kind of answered that one. What would you say to the naysayer or to the person who is in your DMs, how could you not want to be a mom? Aren't you a Christian? Like, let's imagine the worst of the worst scenarios, which I hope doesn't happen or isn't common. Um, but what would you say to them as a Christian and as a wife and just as a woman? Because also that's another conversation, but there might be more pressure as a woman not wanting to have kids than a man. So let's circle back to that. But what would you say to the naysayer who is questioning your decision?
I mean, initially, I'd probably type something out that was really snarky and then I'd erase it. But I'd try to respond with something like, I just don't feel like that's what God has put on my heart. And I hope you can respect me for that. I love my career. I love the family I do have. And we have this goal of building a career and enjoying our lives. And that's the way that we want to enjoy it. So thank you for being here. Feel free to unfollow if you'd like to. It's hard.
As I can say,
Yeah, and people sometimes forget to see past what they've been through, and sometimes you just have to sit down and understand somebody from their perspective, because I mean that's the what we all act on is what we've been through and our perspective of life. So sometimes you just have to like put yourself in somebody else's shoes and be like, I get it, like it's totally okay that she doesn't want kids. It doesn't make her any less than. If any of my friends call me and was like, "Oh, my daughter's sick, can you come over?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I don't know what to do, but I'll sit with her if you need to run in the store." You know? Like,
what to do.
I just think it's important to remember your friends that do have kids and remember your friends that don't have kids, and just try to be there for them. Even if like you just text them, you text your friend who doesn't have kids and you have kids, and you're just like, "What's going on? Like, how are you? Like, how's work?" Like, that's huge. And because there's definitely times at the end of the day where I just feel like it's me and David. Like, and it is. At the end of the day, it is just me and David. And that's what we have to be happy with. But it stings sometimes at my age when you realize, like, okay, I want to plan this trip, but I can't invite anybody, because nobody can,
Yeah.
you know, or I want to plan this big dinner, but nobody can, no, most likely people will say no because it would take getting childcare and blah, blah, blah. And so I think it's just important when you like can't be there in that way for your friend, just text them, call them. When you can get a babysitter, plan something with them, like make an effort because all of these relationships are important. And I'm sure somebody with kids could say something to me too that I could work on. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah, that is a good point that you've hit a stage in your life where all of your friends are married or have, well, or most of them are married and have children. And so then when you're the one that doesn't, that is an interesting point for me to know, right? I mean, Solomon and I are still in a stage where we have single friends, we have married friends with children, we have just married couple friends. So we're kind of in a weird, everyone's still kind of everywhere, but I would assume in 5 years, we'll be in a space where everyone kind of has kids, but as someone who's planning on having kids, that is a good point to think of those friends or family in your life who might not have kids that are keeping them up and keeping them busy and just to check in on them, you know?
Because they have plenty of other things that are keeping them busy and keeping them up at night. It's just not crying child.
Good point, Rachel. I hear you.
Yeah.
So let's take that pin out that I wanted to circle back on. And because I saw your face when I brought it up, like when I had mentioned that, of have you felt a difference in being a woman and not having kids than David has being a male and not wanting kids?
Oh yeah, I think for me it's almost like a how could you not? And for God, it's like, okay, whatever. Like you'll meet the right girl or something and she'll change your mind. Do you know what I mean? And for David,
Yeah.
I don't even feel like anybody questioned him. Not that I know of. I mean, maybe, his family was like, are y'all gonna have kids at some point? But I feel like when they ask me, it's almost like, how dare you? Like, what do you mean? And
I
we
don't
also,
mean to laugh because that's so serious, but it's just because I know you and you're like, what do you mean? What do you mean? But that is, wow, that
yeah.
you're getting all the flash, like the feedback or,
Yeah. And I mean, I will say we live in the South. I mean, we all got married right out of college, and then people got a house and a dog, and then they had a baby. You know what I mean? We
Yep.
didn't make it to the dog. I mean, we literally can't even get a dog. We want a dog, but we travel so much, we
Mhm.
can't. And I mean, we moved for David's job, which I think is important because it adds another layer to what we're doing. You know what I
For
mean? And
sure.
decisions. We move every 2 to 3 years, so it makes sense that we don't want to settle down. We love traveling for his job. So that's another layer to it. And that obviously shouldn't be the only deciding factor of having kids or not. But we're happy with what we're doing. And yeah, I definitely think women are looked at differently than men for sure.
That is such an interesting because I think that that's true in no matter what stage, whether you're like I saw this comedian and every time I see this clip, I send it to Solomon because I think it's hilarious that it takes so little to be praised as a dad, but takes so much to be praised as a mom. And this is coming like I have not had kids yet. Like I cannot speak as to what it's like being a mother, but it's like the dad gets praised for going to like the OB appointments. And the
Yeah.
comedian, she's the mom and she's pregnant. She's like, you know who else had to be here? Me. I'm
Is
the
she,
one.
is she the
What?
Asian lady?
Yes.
Yes, I love her. She was
She's
in one of the,
hilarious.
yes,
I should
yes,
know her name. I'm so sorry that like I'm coming to this quoting and I don't, but she is so funny. And she's like, I had to be there. Like I'm the one. If I wasn't here, there would be no show. And the dad's
yes.
like getting praised. And then, I mean, Salman and I were engaged. I will never forget this. Salman and I were engaged. Had not even got married. We were at a drive-through in his hometown, someone he knew from high school, not even like a friend, but like an acquaintance, was working the drive through. And they were like, hey, what's up? How are you? Oh, you're getting married. And then he was like, when are you having kids? Because he already had a child. And I was like, did you not just hear that we were engaged? Like, I don't even have two rings yet. And I know everyone's like planning is different, but for us, I was like, can I have a second? And then we got married. I remember I saw a friend, I mean, 2 months maybe after we got married. And I'm really close with her and her family. And her mom was like, you know, I thought you'd be pregnant by now. I was like, whoa, whoa, ma'am. Can I have, no, I'm not. Can I have 2 seconds?
Yeah.
What
And
is this
sometimes
expectation?
it's not even asking, it's the way you ask it. Like, I
Mm,
totally don't mind if somebody's like, hey, do you guys plan on having kids? And, obviously when we say no, I hope you'll be respectful. But saying something like, oh, I thought you'd be pregnant by now. First of all, you could be struggling with something. And second
right.
of all, just mind your business. Like,
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point because you need people in your life where you can go and ask those questions. Like I have friends who like, please ask me like how if our planning or family planning and all that. Like please ask me because we're close and I know you care and you know where I stand on that. But it is sometimes knowing your place, like if it's like a stranger or an acquaintance, because that's such a good point, you don't know if a couple is struggling or you don't know if they have decided not to have kids or you don't know if they're fighting right now and or
yeah,
struggling in their marriage. And I think it just comes to like if you're close with that person and you have that relationship, then you already know like the tone in which to ask because you're checking in. But sometimes it's also like don't be nosy, it's none of your business.
I
And
think
I say that
sometimes,
in like the most politeful way.
yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it stings a little when it comes from like an older generation. You know what I mean? It's almost like maybe they don't understand how our culture is anymore. Like, it's not acceptable to ask. And
Yeah.
do you just expect that I'm having kids? Like, that's rude, you know? Whereas, but our parents grew up as you get married and you have kids. Like, that
So
was
true.
I feel like not having kids now is less taboo. It's still taboo, but back then, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, people didn't even speak about infertility, you know?
So true.
Yeah.
So true. There were so many women that I know in my life who had miscarriages and they never told anyone about having the miscarriage. And then thankfully, because they wanted to, they were able to have children. And now I'm so thankful that it is something we're more open about. But like you mentioned, it is kind of still considered taboo, I guess, to not have kids because it's not the most popular
Yeah.
response, especially because we do live in the South. It's like you're kind of expected to have kids, which there's pros and cons of living anywhere, I think. But do you think that it will forever be taboo, or do you have hope that it's gonna, even if it doesn't become more popular of a choice, at least it's more accepted and not as shocking?
I definitely think it will be less shocking as we go on. I mean, women also have so many more opportunities now to grow in their careers. And I hate to get into all that stuff, but it's true. I mean, I
Yeah.
have my own business that I run 24/7. If you would have asked me when I was in college if I was going to do something like this, I'd be like, probably not. Like, I'm just going to go work in corporate America and sit in a cubicle, which is fine if that's what you're doing and you're happy
Yep.
doing
If that's what you want to do, it's awesome. Do what
it.
you want to do.
Is there some music playing or is it just me? I
Just
think
you.
it's um
I
what
did
was
have
I
a lawnmower just go by my window, so I'm hoping that people can't hear that.
But I do think it will become less taboo. I think it already is. I mean, I just hope people will speak out more about it. You know, like when you have the opportunity, share why you decided not to have kids because it doesn't have to be just because you're career driven. It could just be because simply because you know you can't either maybe provide the lifestyle you want for a family, and that's enough for you to not have kids, or you just don't want to. You just don't see yourself being a mom or a dad, and that's okay. Like, it's fine. Like, we have full lives to lead outside of having children.
Mm. I think that's so good. I think of my sister who I come from a very large family. There's 5 children, and I loved coming from a big family. And my parents like loved being parents. Like my mom always said, like she just knew she wanted to be a mom. And my older sister, hopefully she doesn't mind me sharing this. I hope she does. Don't think she does. She's very open about it, but she doesn't want to have any biological children. She's like, I have zero interest in ever carrying a child, ever being pregnant. Who knows what the Lord has for her, but she's very passionate about adoption. And she's like, I want kids. I'd love to have a family. She like started dating this guy and she like told him up front, I'm not having children, but I will be adopting. And she told me that, and like they had only been like dating for a hot second. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, you already told him that? Not that I cared what he thought, but I
Yeah.
was like,
Don't
that's,
scare them off.
I was like, that's like serious. Like, you're like heavy hitting already talking about kids. And she was like, well, I know that it's a big life decision. I know where I stand. She's like, can my decision change? Sure. But right now it's not, and I don't see it changing. So why not just go ahead and be upfront and open about that? And she's
Yeah.
like, so confident and like could care less what anyone thinks about her decision because it's her decision, right? It's her life and her body and her, I mean, whoever her spouse is going to be, like if they make that decision together. I think the biggest thing from this conversation that I'm getting is if you are confident and you've taken it to the Lord, then you are making that decision for yourself. And there is still so much for you in your, like your identity doesn't have to be wrapped around having a family if it's not, if that's not what you or the Lord has called, because you have done so much, not just for you and your husband and your family, but for the kingdom of God through, even though you haven't had kids, right? Like you've done so much through your blog and through your marriage and through your relationships and friendships that it's okay. And just to make your decision and not let, I guess, other people's fear or opinions hold you back.
Yeah. And all at the end of the day, all that matters is your relationship with Christ. I mean, it's all that matters. It doesn't matter what anybody says or thinks, you know. That's the
So
beauty of it.
true.
That's all that matters. I mean, so just stay in constant communication with Christ and we'll tell you what to do. I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds so simple, doesn't it?
You're like, come on, guys. It's not that hard. Okay. I think that's a perfect place to end because I'm like, I feel like that's the mic drop of it's between you and Christ. So
Yeah.
y'all make that decision together, like you follow the Lord's will. Is there anything on your end as the person who's the topic of conversation today that we've missed that you think you would want either people who are on the same page as you as not wanting kids or on the opposite end of maybe not understanding that decision to know before we go today?
Um, just make sure you stay true to yourself, and that comes with speaking to the Lord. You know, He will show you. And remember, it's okay to change your mind. You know, if I decide to have a kid next year, y'all do not come for me. Okay. I'm not going to, but just in
If it
case. I
happens.
just also if you are
Disclaimer.
yes, you can change your mind. Okay. Also, if you are struggling with infertility, my heart goes out to you. I cannot even imagine. And I hope nothing we said rubbed you the wrong way.
Mm,
Obviously, we're just on different sides, and that's okay. And again, just remember to check in with your friends and family who may be on the opposite side than you. There are more things to build a relationship on than having kids or not having kids. Don't let
yeah.
that ruin your relationship with somebody, because either way, that person has so much to offer besides making a decision opposite of yours. So,
Rachel, you're too good. Just a peace sign.
all this from experience, because I have lost out on relationships, I feel like, because we decided not to have kids, and it's so unfortunate. Like
Really?
it's so silly. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, Rachel, thank you for being confident in who God has called you to be in your relationship and your decision. I think as a woman, especially, it can be way more difficult to be open about that. Like we talked about, maybe David's probably, and also knowing David, it's probably never even thought that it's a big deal to like talk to his friends or his coworkers of like, no, I'm not having kids. And you're openly posting about it and answering questions from other, women or moms. So thank you for shining a light for all those who maybe are in the same boat as you or aren't and kind of like looking in and wanting to know more. Appreciate your time, but most importantly, thanks for being real.